morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for gathering. This is a very sad day. Emergency services were called to a house fire on Victory Road in Allington at 3:46 a.m. this morning. Sadly, I can now confirm that 5 children have died. The 6th child has been transferred to hospital. There appears to have been some valiant attempts by the father of the children to rescue his children.
They had the nation's sympathy. Mick and Mairead Philpott were a grieving couple who'd lost their children in a callous arson attack.
I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just kept off.
But those close to events sensed something wasn't right.
What I saw there was a guy who was sat there pretending to cry. I didn't believe that he was genuinely overcome with grief and emotion.
He used an expletive in reference to the children. I've never heard a parent reference their children in that way.
Have you any idea what's caused the fire? I've no idea, mate, but it's been woke up by the alarm.
He was acting, and we said to each other that was wrong. Everything about that was wrong.
"18 Victory Road in Derby is boarded up and still charred. There's no mistaking what happened here. But even before the fire, this property and its inhabitants had a reputation.
In this 3-bedroomed house lived a husband, his wife, his lover, and the 11 children that they'd had between them. The 2 women took turns to share the man's bed. Now, if all this sounds like something you've heard on the Jeremy Kyle show, it probably is.
Wife number 1 comes to spend the night in the caravan, and then the next night, wife number 2 comes to spend the night.
Oh yes, great lifestyle. Yeah. Yeah, it is true.
Mick Philpott appeared on the show in 2007. His wife Mairead was pregnant, as was his lover, Lisa Willis.
Talk to that, pal. Talk to that. You're not worth it.
I'm not worth it.
No.
What are you worth?
The fact that Philpott was willing to go on the Kyle programme in the first place because there had been criticism of his lifestyle locally and nationally, it's a sense in which he wants to challenge people who are going to judge him in a way that he does not want to be judged.
I did nothing but compliment your kid. I apologise.
It was a lifestyle that had shocked Anne Widdecombe. The former Tory MP made a documentary with the Philpotts about benefits culture.
He'd found a method of living which suited him. He had a choice of women. He was being kept by the state. The only thing he didn't have was the size of house he wanted. He had all the worldly goods he wanted. He was wholly without shame. He was known as, locally, Shameless Mick.
Where is the dignity in 2 20-year-old something women allowing a man twice their age to have sex with them every other night whilst you do all this with children? I don't get it. Explain to me.
Well,
is that not sexist?
No, he's not doing it behind my back.
Lisa was your bridesmaid at your wedding!
For legal reasons, we can't identify Lisa. But 5 years after this was filmed, she decided to walk out on the arrangement, taking her 5 children with her.
My greatest source of amazement was when Lisa walked out, because my reading of the situation was that he had them exactly where he wanted them, and that they didn't have the self-esteem to say no.
Lisa's decision to leave seems to have surprised Mick Philpott as well, and it appears it may have been the trigger for a reckless decision with tragic consequences. On May the 11th, 2012, emergency services received this call.
Yeah. I can't get them back in the kitchen. Yeah, terraced house. Yeah, but we've got the police on the way. Have you any idea what's caused the fire? I've no idea, mate, but it's been woke up by the alarm. There's smoke everywhere. There's smoke everywhere.
We're just being told by police in Derbyshire that 5 children have died in a house fire.
I've looked out the window and then obviously I've seen flames coming out of a doorway.
Naturally, I knew there's kids in there. How many? I didn't know.
I just tried to look for a way to get in, obviously. You couldn't really see nothing. That's how bad it was. I had police officers saying, you know, come out, come out. I was like, no, there's 6 kids in here.
Once my brother knew that emergency services was there, he stopped, his efforts stopped then. But his hope was still there, like mine was, until we seen the children come out. And all hope was gone. It was gone.
Was it? Yeah.
So that was it.
Jamie, you saw Mick, didn't you, round the front of the house? What did you say to him?
I apologised to him for not being able to save his kids. And it hurts now knowing full well that...
We tried. It was the best we could do. We tried, mate.
The children, Jade, who was 10, John, who was 9 years old, Jack, who was 8, Jessie, who was 6, and 5-year-old Jaden, were all overcome by smoke. 13-year-old Duane died later in hospital.
I can confirm that a woman in her late 20s has been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with this case. What I'm actually asking today is that don't read too much into that arrest at this stage.
On the day of the fire, police arrested Mick's former lover, Lisa Willis, amid claims that she'd threatened to burn down the house.
Well, this seems to have centred very much, I think, on the ongoing domestic dispute that was taking place between her and Mick Philpott. And what we'd had since the breakup of their relationship was a number of instances where the two of them seemed to have been falling out. And there was a suggestion, I think, from the Mick Philpott side of the camp, if I could phrase it like that, that Lisa Willis had made threats against him and his property.
The Butler brothers heard Mick Philpott berating police for not acting on warnings about threats to burn down his house.
Yeah, he was up in the police's faces about something being threatened, and this police officer didn't know what he was talking about. He looked shocked. Maybe you'll take this threat serious now, will you? And the cop looked at him and said, what threat are you on about? Yeah, I don't know what you're on about.
Fire investigators established that an accelerant had been used to start the fire. These photographs show the extent of the damage inside, but the idea that fuel had been poured in through the letterbox wasn't supported by the evidence. Fire investigator Dave Koss used the expert nose of his dog Freckle to pinpoint where the fire was ignited.
Initially, when we removed the salvage sheet, all the plaster off the walls was down, all the ceiling had collapsed on the floor, so you're probably talking about 4 or 5 centimetres of debris, quite hard, compact debris. We ran the dog over that, and it didn't indicate straight away, but it did show a little bit of interest around the doorway. So we held on to the dog whilst we made a bit of an incision into the debris, and then upon putting the dog back in that area, it got an immediate indication from the dog.
When the fire started, a window opened both downstairs and up meant the stairway acted like a chimney, sucking thick smoke into the children's bedrooms. The only girl, Jade, was in her own room. Jaden and Duane shared the bedroom next door, and Jessie, John and Jack were in the front bedroom. Mick and Mairead Philpott said they were asleep in the conservatory. A ladder was found leaning up against the wall, as if someone had prepared an escape route. Philpott would claim he'd earlier been cleaning the conservatory windows. There was, however, petrol in the sink, the type used to start the fire, as if someone had rinsed it from their hands. Here, there was also an unused fire extinguisher.
And while there was petrol in the front hall at the foot of the stairs, there was no evidence of fuel on the letterbox or outside of the property. So something was wrong. The theory that a malicious arsonist started the fire didn't match the initial police evidence. But then the evidence didn't make much sense either. Why would someone on the inside douse the home with petrol and start a fire? Especially if they knew that children were asleep upstairs. 5 days after the fire, Mick Philpott decided he wanted to hold a media appeal to thank the community for their support.
The press conference is significant because it reveals Philpott's narcissism. He believed by calling that press conference, he could control the public's reaction to these events. In fact, all it did was reveal him to be a liar.
The South Bank Show returns to Sky Arts 1HD.
Now a West End Renaissance man discusses the controversies that have marked his career.
Maybe if I call this comedy, other people will believe me.
I'll be looking at the ever-changing state of the British art scene today. And one of Britain's top playwrights breaks his silence in his first TV profile in 30 years.
Morality is not about telling other people how to behave, it's about how you behave yourself.
The new series of the South Bank Show starts Thursday, April 18th on Sky Arts 1HD.
If we could supply fresh water, this would be the perfect location for the new town.
Using their 3D experience platform, Dassault Systèmes proved Georges Mogin's dream of transporting icebergs could become reality. It takes a special kind of compass to explore the world's future possibilities. Dassault Systèmes. If we ask the right questions, we could change the world.
These aren't just tickets to some skinny-jeaned boy band. These are the doors to paradise. And you are no longer ordinary parents. You are superheroes. How do we know? Because every year we thrill card members with millions of the hottest tickets in town. We even arrange for a select few to meet their idols. Tears of joy and pounding hearts. Just part of the rock and roll service we deliver daily. American Express. Realise the potential.
At Wix, we are proud to help you save money on your projects with 25% off hundreds of quality products. There's now 25% off all Wix flooring, 25% off all Wix tiles, and 25% off both Wix and Dulux colour emulsion. All on offer until Monday, 15th of April. Saving you money on your projects. It's got our name on it. Wix.
I'm gonna love you like nobody's loved you. Come rain or come shine. High as a mountain and deep as a river. Come rain or come shine.
On the 16th of May, the Philpotts prepared to face the media.
What I saw was a guy who came in and bounced into the room to receive a briefing from me in a rather excited state, relishing, I thought, the prospect of going out in front of the TV cameras. I didn't believe that he was genuinely overcome with grief and emotion. I thought he was playing to the cameras.
I turned on Sky News and watched the press conference live. And I literally fell off my chair because it was very, very obvious that at various points in the press conference, he was simply not telling the truth.
Just invite Mr. Philpott now to address you.
First of all, I want to thank my 3 Irish children because they helped me to cope with what's going on. And then there's a young lad called Daniel Stevenson who tried to get me out, the same as myself, Joe across the road, and the Butler brothers. And of course there's the 4 firemen the police, the ambulances, the doctors, the nurses, literally everybody who tried to help save our children, they couldn't.
Those were actually emotional words, and he realizes that he should be showing emotion. So he literally apologizes to the camera and then covers his face with his handkerchief and pretends to cry.
There was no real heartfelt appeal or anger coming from him that I saw, appealing for information for anyone to come forward to find the killer of his children.
I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it.
He dabs his forehead with his handkerchief, not his eyes. It's almost as if he's wiping away the sweat because, of course, he's perspiring because he's not telling the truth.
Them poor gentlemen from the fire brigade who saw what we've seen, you know, my heart goes out to them because it's not just us that's suffering, it's them as well. It's everybody.
He draws attention to the police, the fire brigade, the ambulance service.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
By identifying those people, he is also saying, I'm one of those people too. I did the same as they did during this incident. I'm also being heroic.
But Philpott's version of events, including his heroics, were coming under question.
We had conflicting reports of whether he'd made the valiant attempts that were initially suggested. A couple of guys there really did make some valiant attempts. It's interesting to note that they didn't see that same kind of bravery from Mick Philpott.
They just stood there. They stood there like a couple of statues in the garden, when really they should have been in the house.
He didn't scream, shout, help me, my kids. There wasn't no emotions, like my brother said, he was motionless, there was nothing.
When the couple went to view their children at the mortuary, staff there also observed strange behaviour.
He was looking at the children and then he looked at this individual and said, you know, well, he used an expletive in reference to the children, which took me aback because I've never heard a parent reference their children in that way, who have just died.
Police took the decision to bug the couple's room where they were staying at the Premier Inn. Mairead was due to give a statement, and the night before, whilst they were watching TV, Mick Philpott whispered this. The next day, after her statement, he quizzed her about it.
What did you say? Tell me what you said to him. What did you say about how many times I went up ladders?
I almost can't how many times I went up the ladders.
What did you say about me trying to go in?
You tried everything you could to get in. Like I said to him, I wanted to run through the flames up the stairs.
What did you cry when you were saying it? How bad?
Not really, really bad, but I did cry.
That's hysterical.
Investigators felt they were being deceived.
This morning at 10 a.m, we arrested a 55-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman in the city centre of Derby.
Becky Johnson, Sky News. It's being widely reported that the two people arrested are the children's parents. Is that something you can confirm?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to confirm that.
On the 31st of May, the Philpotts were driven to court in a police van. And en route, police secretly recorded another conversation.
Come on, sweet pea. Come on, no. What's your neck, mate? It'll be alright.
You don't let me have any Mick rings or anything.
Why?
Because of that self-harming I done.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm not in the club and
What? You know something? Have they got any evidence on you? They've got nothing on me. Nothing.
There's very clearly been an agreement between them, and at the point that they're split up after being arrested, you know, Mick Philpott's been quite anxious that he gets back to Mairead to make sure that she has stuck to the story. That would be the first time actually that he's outside of his control And I would imagine he was particularly worried around what she may have said or may not have said. And hence I think you get this conversation quite early on, as soon as they're put back together, and he stuck to the story.
Police later arrested another man, Paul Mosley, seen here 3 days after the fire. He was in the house that night after being invited to a threesome with Mick and Mairead.
So the police were now working on a theory that the Philpotts had started the fire in order to blame and discredit Mick's former lover, Lisa Willis, ahead of their custody battle over the 5 children that she'd taken with her. In other words, it was a deadly gamble, risking the lives of 6 children in order to gain custody of the other 5.
On June the 22nd, Derby was reminded of the desperate tragedy of this story.
I remember on the day being very moved when we went outside to greet the 6 hearses as they came along. And I've said about the clip-clop of the hooves as the hearse came, saying, yes, this is for real. You know, there are 6 horses and 6 hearses and 6 children.
Mother and father were absent, held under suspicion of being responsible for these scenes. At the trial, police produced evidence that all 3 suspects had petrol on their clothes on the night of the fire. Mick Philpott's explanation was he'd been handling fuel for his garden strimmer, but this was a different type of petrol.
Now, the petrol engine for that machine was actually a 2-stroke petrol engine, and evidence of 2-stroke petrol being used to set that fire was not found. It was straight petrol which set that fire. And I think that discredited Mick Philpott's account completely and utterly in respect to the explanation as to why petrol was on his clothing.
Initial charges of murder had been changed to manslaughter. Police believed the plan had been to rescue the children but blame Lisa for the fire ahead of the custody hearing that day. More Premier Inn recordings were played to the jury.
No judge in his right mind now is going to turn around and say, you're not going to see your kids.
No.
That's what's happening.
I don't
And then
think
he's going to also think Lisa is one heartless.
This began with a family seemingly wronged, but it turned into an even more twisted story, a plan that nobody could have possibly imagined, a reckless act that any parent would find hard to comprehend.
I keep going over and over in my head, and this is what made me collapse today. Why didn't my kids hear me? Why did the fire set so quick?
This was just a very foolish, stupid, malicious and reckless act to use petrol as an accelerant for some bizarre idea that it's going to assist your case at a family court hearing later that day. I just think is off the scale.
He did not intend, in my view, to kill his children, but he saw them as possessions, and he therefore fought over possessions in a breakup of a relationship in the way that other couples might fight over who gets possession of the car.
Well, when I first met him, he seemed a perfectly normal chap living a very extraordinary life, but as I got to know him better, I thought there was something missing in Mick Philpott.
Admit it. That's all I'll tell you. I hate you, and admit it.
Introducing a match made in skin heaven. New Venus and Olay. Olay moisture bars help lock in moisture, while 5 blades get Venus close. Revealing smooth, renewing beauty. And goddess skin begins, only from Venus and Olay.
Hyundai thinks, wherever your adventures take you, get there in style. The Hyundai iX35 makes any adventure brilliant. Hyundai.
Online dating again?
It's 2013, Grandma. Deal with it. He's reeling one in. She thinks I'm funny, but she's not sure about my photo.
Yeah, it is a bit fun, Dad. Quick, swap it for this one before she bails.
Just keep her smiling.
Not the cheese joke.
How do I feel about electrophobia? Fear of chickens is rare, but...
She means the band, mate. Tell her you got tickets to see him on Friday.
Have I?
You do now.
I've got a date.
8 times faster fibre optic broadband. Infinity, only from BT.
So that's the focus.
Okay, I take the hint. Singing was annoying, so I found a new way to tell people how much money they could save on their car insurance. There he is.
It's a dog.
The dog on the end, that's not